right, folks, quick update for you again. Today's Wednesday, same week. We're getting steel in. So the footing guys finished digging all the footings yesterday. So we've got all that done. They're spot on, like I called them. I called them dirt surgeons. They did a spectacular job. Probably some of the cleanest footer work I've ever seen in my life. Super happy, very, very pleased with their work. The concrete guy has came in yesterday afternoon. He's got his steel crew in here. They're putting steel in now. They've got their runs. They're basically bending all the corner bars. They're going to tie them together. I'll show you some of the places where they've already gotten some of the corners together. So there you go. So that one is an example of some of the corners that are done. So typically in rebar, you want to have 2 foot overlap on all of your bar. So they look like they've gone ahead and bent an 8 foot bar in half. So we have 4 feet this way, 4 feet that way. And that gives them plenty of overlap. And it's really the right way to do it to ensure that you don't have to like precisely bend everything perfect to, get everything exact measurements. You just, they cut a bunch of 8 foot pieces and then they bend them into a 90. And then they all work unilaterally across all the corners. So we've gone ahead and used number 4 rebar in the footing. We've got 3 runs of it. The structural drawings for this job that we designed in-house called for either this option, which is 3 runs of number 3 bar, or you could put in the steel shreds. I'm happy that the contractor has elected to go this way. I did leave it up to him as to which way he wanted to go. He decided to go this way. Footer mix, which is what it's called, is a little bit pricey, and there's still not a lot of published literature on what the break strength is as to whether or not it's stronger than this or not. So anyways, that's where we're at with that particular situation. We went ahead, got a bonus here. We've got a wider footer on this back edge of the porch. We have a lot of gravel that's going to be filled in here, about close to 3.5 feet of fill in this area here, and all that weight is going to be pushing against this exterior wall. So what we've got is we've got a little bit of a wider footer. He went ahead and made that decision on his own, and that way he superseded the structural drawings, which is fantastic. Still going to get 3 rows of rebar. Just going to have a little bit more of a wider footer to handle all that pressure, that force is going to push against this exterior wall. And they've got their bar already cut. So they still got to do all their step downs, which are kind of like a Z bend. So it kind of goes like this. Usually you'll do this. It's a radius like that, and it goes down like that. And it basically, you have to maintain a continuous unbroken run of bar even across all of your step downs and intersections. So that's basically why they do it that way. They're probably not going to be finished with the steel today because they've got all these vertical bars to put in, and that takes a little bit of time to do all the bending. But this is an example of how we typically will do our vertical bar, which is something that Benchmark Homes insists on. When we do a foundation, we insist on having vertical bar. That way our block walls actually have structural reinforcement and not just stacked blocks sitting on mortar that are sitting on a footer with no actual real tie-in to the actual foundation. The way we do it, everything is poured and everything is tied together to make one like solid foundation. Yes, it costs a little bit more than going the other way, but it's not so much. Maybe in the grand scheme of the entire home, you're talking about another, for this size home, it probably made about a $10,000 price increase to put in the vertical reinforcement, go with the actual steel, and actually have the cells, that's the block wall, filled solid, so that the entire home is just a solid home that's going to be there for generations to come. So that's the way we like to do things here at Benchmark. But as you can see, the steel is in now, and it really looks good. When you start looking at the steel and you look at how it's run, it's really easy to see how the steel guys can steal the show. Anyway, all dad jokes aside, everything's turning out right. This is actually the landing pad for the block wall steps and what they elected to go ahead and do. This is going to be inside the garage. It was kind of counterintuitive or prohibitive to actually dig out like and leave like a small strip here. I talked about it in a previous video. They went ahead and dug the whole thing out. This is going to be one solid flat footing, going to be super strong. Those steps will probably be there for 1,000,000 years, maybe not 1,000,000 years. We got our pier bases all dug out. They do have to put steel in here. A lot of contractors will just fill this in with concrete, no steel. They'll use what they call FHA blocks, and then which basically they're just solid block. They mortar them together, and then the actual foundation rests on top of the girders on the subfloor rest on top of those piers. And while for downward force, it handles the downward force, it has zero uplift force. So if there's anything that gets under there, or the house is exposed to shear forces, you have to prevent compressive forces and uplifting forces when you're building a home. A lot of that gets missed around here. So in addition to that, we got steel that's going to go in the footer, or these foundation pads for these piers. The block, we're using regular 8-inch block, and they're going to get grouted solid, and there's going to be rebar and all those. And then the cap on top of the block itself is going to be shot with a laser, and the cap will be poured at the right thickness so that the girder can rest perfectly on top of it and sit in the pocket in the masonry wall on the exterior perimeter. So we do things really technical here. We want things to be as close to perfect as we can get them. I call it excellent. We do excellent work, and that's what I expect from all my subcontractors. So far, everything is turning out in excellence. We do look like we're getting a little bit of rain here. Hopefully it won't be too bad and cause any delays in our schedule, but that's the nature of doing, until you get the house dried in, you're always at the mercy of weather. So if it does rain torrentially, what will end up happening is the footers will end up filling in with water. The soil here, because we know what the septic system that's getting over there, what it perks at, we know that the footers are going to drain relatively quickly. The dirt work guy didn't glaze over the trenches too bad, so we should still see a certain amount of moisture absorbent in the footers if it does rain. So we're not overly worried about that situation. But in any case, there's your update for now, for today. They're moving right along. They've got tomorrow, the rest of today and tomorrow, to finish getting all the steel in, and then we'll get our inspection, and then we're shooting for pouring concrete on Friday. They have one other thing they got to do, is they got to drive in elevation pins all over the footing. And you may ask yourself, Jason, what's an elevation pin? Glad you asked. An elevation pin is basically, they put those in the footer so they know at what point to stop pouring concrete. So the ideal situation in a perfect world is they fill the footer until it's at the very top of the very top of the elevation pin, and then they know they've reached the right elevation for that tier of footing. And like I said previously, this foundation has 3 elevations of footing, or 2 step downs from the prime elevation. The majority of the house is up there is 1 elevation. Right in here, we have another step down, and then this last little bit, following the contour geography of the land, we have another step down. Very commonplace here in Tennessee. So there you go, a little bit of a lesson in what we're dealing with when it comes to foundations and such. One more thing I'd like to add in. One of a contractor's headaches is dealing with all of these like piles of like leftover concrete all over the job site that the concrete company leaves throughout the project. There's going to be 3 separate pours of concrete on this particular project. One mobilization is these footers. The next one is going to be when they do the garage slab floor and fill in all the block and the piers, and then the last one will be for the porches, the porch slabs. Every single time the concrete company has leftover mud in their truck, so they usually will leave it with you on site in the form of a big pile, and then you have to take a skid steer or a track hoe or something like that and break it up, or throw it in the dumpster and haul it off. That's extra waste. It's not extra waste in the regard to the concrete, but extra waste with space in the dumpster. That little pile of concrete may weigh 1,000 pounds. It adds to the dumpster disposal fees, and you're basically throwing away good fill. To combat that, we dig a really big hole, big enough to put a Pinto in, and then we actually use that throughout the entire project. We do need to put caution flagging around this pit. That's the last thing. The site contractor just dug it, so it's ready to go. We've got to caution it off so that nobody falls in there with safety first. But anyway, all the concrete trucks will wash out into this pit. They will dump their rest of their concrete in this pit, and the block masons, all the busted block, broken block, leftover block will go into this pit when we're all said and done, and then it will get filled with about 2 foot of dirt. This is under the driveway. We put this under the driveway so that it never gets seen again. It's 2 feet under, so you can trench like cable lines and things like that. Maybe you want to run a sprinkler system or something like that down the future. You're not going to hit that impenetrable chunk of concrete and masonry. That's why we dig it so deep. So that's something that we do at Benchmark. We're always 10 steps ahead of where we actually are on the project. Like, we're already dealing with roofing and we haven't even gotten the footers out of the ground yet. We're already buying shingles, we're already getting the roofing contractor lined up, and that's about 5 to 6 weeks away. So we're always way ahead of the game. We try to see whatever's coming down the pike. It's similar to playing chess. You always got to be 5 moves ahead of where you really are. So that's my rant for the day. You see the project. Let me give you one final panoramic of the site. That's it for today, guys. I'm gonna get out of here. I'll see you again tomorrow. Peace out.